So I thought I'd do a short little video riffing off of Kierkegaard. I'm out for a hike here and got caught in the rain, and so I'm just hanging out under a bridge here with Otis, who's enjoying getting himself a little wet there. Yeah, Kierkegaard is considered the grandfather of existentialism. Whenever I'm having those moments in life where I'm feeling a little bit low or world weary, he's a guy that I would pick up and read and feel immediately like he gets it. And he's just so witty and I don't know, just with it that it's food for the soul. Kierkegaard, that's what I'm trying to say. But what I want to talk about specifically is his contrast between the aesthetic motive of life and the ethical motive of being. There's a third, which is the religious, which I'm not going to get into. I'm not sure if I understand it or if I agree with that, quote unquote, leap that he makes there. But the aesthetic mode of life, the way of being, involves a person who subjects themselves or submits to the pleasure principle, essentially. Whatever feels good, whatever allows them to avoid discomfort, pain, suffering. They're just chasing after sensory experiences. And, we see lots of that in our modern age. Arguably, it's defined by that, right? So we have unprecedented people who are, addicted to video games, pornography, food, social clout via, their social media addictions and likes and, wanting to be perceived as a good person and all this kind of thing. And so it's more than just sensory titillation from Kierkegaard's vantage point. There can be like layered scaffolding that makes it appear, a bit more sophisticated. Whether it's a person who is chasing after, getting the most sales in their profession and accumulating wealth, or again, chasing after the social clout and likes and being, a modern day social media influencer. So for Kierkegaard, though, this is it's a tragedy in a sense. It's a failing to choose one's life. It's allowing those lower impulses, desires, sensory titillations, allowing that to dictate what your life is going to be. So again, like we're just chasing after the most comfortable life. We're seeking happiness, where happiness is defined as, accumulating the most pleasure, the most sensory experience, and avoiding discomfort and pain, and so on and so forth. But for Kierkegaard, this is living a life that is, it's a dehumanization of sorts. It's not living up to the dignity of what a human is. It's certainly not living any kind of spiritual or higher existence, and it's a tragedy. It's a loss. The person fails to become who they could really be. So the ethical mode of life is one where the person decides that there are values or principles that they're going to use as a North Star to orient their life. So there's something greater than mere pleasure and pain. There are worse things than death. And so the person seeks to hold themselves to a higher standard, a higher plane of existence, more of a spiritual kind of existence. I don't mean in the religious sense necessarily, but in spirit in the sense that you're abiding by the logos, the higher mode of understanding. You're bringing something into being through your efforts, something that escapes just the mere sensory materialist mode of existence. So, someone who wants to live a life where they embody the virtues of courage and truthfulness, honor. These are things that if you want to live in that way, if you want to be that kind of person, you're going to have to endure a certain amount of suffering, a certain amount of discomfort, but in so doing, like, you're arguably living a life of meaning as opposed to a life of just mere, where you're no different than I don't know, like a rodent or a slug or something like that. So now, once you have embraced that form of life, living an ethical life, a principled existence, a life that is determined by values that it's out there in the culture, but you choose it. You give it the I guess the power over you. You elevate it to a place where who you are, who you could become, it's on the horizon, and you're moving as close as you can toward that day in and day out. You're measuring yourself against who you were the day before. Once you've done that, then any kind of deviation from that higher plane, that higher mode of being, is for Kierkegaard rather, is it's a form of living in sin. Like, you're sinning against that higher mode of existence, and so you're going to have like a guilty conscience. And this is something that Nietzsche talks about as well. And this is a good thing. Now, the challenge there, though, is to, especially these days where I think so much of what we do, even if it's not immediately obvious, so much of what we do is rooted in shame and, avoiding shame or taking pleasure in shaming others and so on and so forth. Like, we don't want to do that as it relates to our own efforts to become more than who we've been. So, we want to feel a sense of loss that we've so when we've fallen short of our ideals, which can never be fully realized, so you're always going to fall short of those ideals, but you're moving towards something. When you slip up, when you make a mistake, when you fall back into these old patterns, you don't want to shame yourself. Like, you want to feel, if anything, a sense of disappointment, not in yourself, but for yourself, that you're capable of so much more, and yet there's a part of you that turned away from yourself, the self that you're trying to actualize, in the sense that, you're getting as close as you can to whatever that is. And so it's a sense of like a heaviness in your heart that that some part of you has given up. And so you want to use that as a call to action, as a call to reinvigorate, re-energize yourself and get back in the saddle and make things happen. And again, this is for Kierkegaard, becoming more than just a mere animal. It's a quasi-spiritual type of being. So anyway, I thought that was worth maybe just putting out there in case someone maybe hasn't come across Kierkegaard. I'd strongly recommend that you check out some of his work. And a good entry point to Kierkegaard, someone had recommended this book to me years ago, and I'm so glad that I took them up on it. It's a book by Donald Palmer, and it's called, I think, Kierkegaard for Beginners. And it's a bit of a comic book and also, an exploration of some of his main ideas. Now, that sounds like it's going to be, superficial and one of these, Kierkegaard for Dummies type book and whatnot, and it is not. Donald Palmer obviously understood Kierkegaard, and there's just some beautiful insights there. So if you can grab that book, I think it would be probably helpful to a lot of people. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for today. Okay, thanks for listening.